Ladies and gentlemen, with very warm greeting in this morning, we warmly welcome you all to the 11th International Conference organized by University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka. University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka, well known as ICULA, is a recognized professional body which connects all academic library professionals in the country. ICULA has been organizing various events to promote the profession and information services across the university library sector. International conferences are one of such events to share knowledge and interest of library professionals from Sri Lanka and overseas institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we warmly welcome you to the inauguration of International Conference of University Librarians Association, ICULA 2021. First, in keeping with tradition, may I have the honor of inviting following dignitaries to light the oil lamp to consecrate the inauguration ceremony of ICULA 2021.
Chief Guest, Major General Melinda Pires, Vice Chancellor, General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University. Keynote Speaker, Mrs. Barbara Leeson, President, International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. Keynote Speaker, Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja, Chairman, Centre for Humanitarian Affairs, Sri Lanka. Keynote Speaker, Dr. Mrs. Pradeepa Vijayatunga, Director, National Institute of Library and Information Science, University of Colombo. Dr. C. Malavarachi, President, University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka and the Conference Chair. Mr. W. Sunil, Director General, National Library and Documentation Services Board, Sri Lanka. Dr. Mrs. Nadira Rupasinghe, Director General, Department of National Archives, Sri Lanka. Mrs. R. C. Kodikara, Librarian, University of Moratuwa. Mrs. T. N. Zure, Librarian, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. Dr. Mrs. N. Vijay Sundara, Librarian, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. Dr. C. C. Jayasundara, Librarian, University of Kelaniya. Mr. W. J. Jairaj, Librarian, Eastern University, Sri Lanka. Senior Professor M. K. Veerasinghe, Head, Library and Information Science, Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Kelaniya. Dr. Ruwan Gamage, President, Sri Lanka Library Association. Dr. Saman Ilangaratna, General Secretary, University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka. Dr. Mohammed Majid Mashrufa, Conference Secretary, ICULA 2021. Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, madam. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now rise for the national anthem with pride. Thank you. Now, may I invite Dr. D.C. Malivarachi, Conference Chair, ICULA 2021, to welcome you all to this wonderful gathering.
Very good morning, Reverend Sirs, Chief Guest, Major General Minda Piris, Vice Chancellor of the General Surgeon Kothala Defence University, Sri Lanka, keynote speakers, Mrs. Barbara Layson, President of International Federation of Library Association and Institutions, IFLA, Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja, Executive Director, Center for Humanitarian Affairs, Sri Lanka, Dr. Mrs. Pradeepa Vijayatunga, Director, National Institute for Library and Information Science, University of Colombo. Conference Secretary, Dr. Mrs. Mashrupa, Senior Assistant Librarian, Eastern University of Sri Lanka. Librarians, Acting Librarians, Deputy Librarians, Senior Assistant Librarians, and Assistant Librarians of universities. Invitees, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all to the International Conference of University Librarians Association, ICULA 2021. This is a truly unique platform for us to come together and shape the future in scholarly research, publications, and to enhance research visibility. First and foremost, I warmly welcome our chief guest, Major General Milinda Piris, Vice Chancellor of the General Surgeon Kothala Defence University, for very kindly accepting our invitation and for gracing this occasion as the chief guest of ICULA 2021. Sir, your presence as one of the most legendary officers in defense, Vice Chancellor, and a scholar, as a great honor to the University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka. I warmly welcome our keynote speakers, Mrs. Barbara Layson, President of the International Federation of Library Association and Institutions. It is a prestigious integrity of ICULA. Madam, you are delivering a keynote speech at ICULA 2021. Also, I welcome Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja, Executive Director, Center for Humanitarian Affairs, Sri Lanka. It's a great pleasure, ICULA. Sir, your presence as a keynote speaker here today to color the ICULA 2021. I also welcome Dr. Mrs. Pradeepa Vijayatunga, the Director, National Institute of Library and Information Science, who is having a very close affinity with ICULA as an illustrator's member of our professional association. Madam, welcome you. This year's theme of ICULA, scholarly publishing and open access for the enhancement of research visibility, highlights the importance of scholarly works where all of us engaging in and their visibility and access for enhancement of knowledge. In the last few years, we have heard terms fake news, disinformation, misinformation rapidly. Yet, we don't know how to be better informed, fight this phenomenon, or train people in combating it. With the vast majority of population relatively new to the technology and not trained in any formal way to decipher or real from unreal, truth from half-truth and lies. People end up believing disinformation as truth, especially when there is enough repetition. ICULA 2021 may bring new insight this phenomenon and its implications. The current efforts and their degrees of success and provide directions for information professionals on the importance of scholarly publishing and research visibility to fight against disinformation and stimulated knowledge. ICULA 2021 is taking place here in Colombo, Sri Lanka, amidst very challenging circumstances. However, it becomes a significant event of the University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka in terms of its resolution to ensure the continuity of ICULA even under most trying circumstances. ICULA has been attracting local and foreign presenters, participants as distinguished scholars and professionals in the field of library and information science, both locally and internationally since 2005. However, this year, the COVID-19 pandemic situation has restricted having them physically present here in Sri Lanka, Colombo. But many of our invitees join us as a virtual platform. I am very enthusiastic and will be great to hear from our keynote speakers about the influence, priorities, development, and comparison to international trends in scholarly publishing and research visibility. Also, from paper presenters, novel and innovative knowledge, practices, and experiences in the same field were very significant now. At last, but not least, I warmly welcome all the paper presenters, ICULA members, local and international participants for the conference. You are very valuable assets for the ICULA 2021. Without you, not the event is success. I conclude. ICULA 2021 has been recognized as an academic event nationally and internationally to establish and strengthen research culture. I wish you all a happy and successful conference. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have Major General Milinda Pires, Vice Chancellor, General Sir John Kotalavala Defense University, as our chief guest today. May I now invite Dr. Mrs. G.D.M.N. Samara Divakara, Acting Librarian, University of Sri Jawatanapura, to read a citation on our chief guest.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce today our chief guest, Major General Milinda Pires, RWP, RSP, BSP, USP, NDC, PSC. Major General Milinda Pires joined Sri Lanka Army as an officer cadet in 1980 and had his basic training at the Officers Training School in Madras, India, and at Sri Lanka Military Academy, Diyatalawa. He was commissioned into the 1st Reconnaissance Regiment, Sri Lanka Armoured Corps, as a second lieutenant on completion of his training. Since then, he held vital and important appointments in the Army commensurate with each rank held, and he reached the pinnacle of his military career in 2016 when he was appointed as the Chief of Staff of the Sri Lanka Army. Major General Milinda Piris is a graduate of National Defence College, New Delhi, Command and Staff College, Bangladesh, and Armour School, Fort Knox, Kentucky, USA. As a pioneer squadron commander of 4th Armored Regiment, he led tank squadrons to many crucial battles, and he commanded the 5th Regiment of Sri Lanka Armored Corps with distinction. He was also the commanding officer of the Officer Cadet Wing at the Sri Lanka Military Academy. Subsequently, he commanded the 561st Infantry Brigade and 232nd Infantry Brigade. Thereafter, he commanded the Armored Brigade. He was the Director Operations at the Joint Operations Headquarters and had been appointed as the Defence Military, Naval and Air Attaché for Sri Lanka in USA. Major General Milinda Piris commanded the 22nd Division in Trincomalee as a General Officer commanding during the period of liberation of the East by the security forces. On return from National Defence College in India, he was appointed as the Vice Chancellor of the General Sir John Kothawala Defence University on 28 December 2008. Under his patronage, the university expanded to be a fully fledged university consisting of 9 academic faculties, and he was instrumental in developing the KDU to lead in the world of tertiary education, lighting the torch of wisdom in thousands of students, both local and foreign. Especially during his tenure as the Vice Chancellor, he took an untiring effort to establish the medical faculty of the KDU, which became nationally and internationally known for its unique ability to produce military medical graduates of the highest caliber to fulfill the healthcare requirements of the dry services, state sector, and society at large. Further, he introduced the university hospital concept for Sri Lanka by providing a tertiary care hospital for the KDU and accomplished mammoth projects while serving in this capacity until 17th February 2016. During his service as the Vice Chancellor of KDU, he was contemporaneously appointed as the Director General of the Center for Research and Development, Ministry of Defense, Military Secretary to the Army Headquarters, and Colonel Commandant of the Mechanized Infantry Regiment, and also served as the Colonel Commandant of the Sri Lanka Armored Corps. In recognition of his contribution to Sri Lanka's higher education sector, Major General Milinda Piris was appointed as a committee member in the National Education Commission and in the University Grants Commission in Sri Lanka. He was a member of the Board of Management of Defence Services Command and Staff College, the Committee of Vice Chancellors and Directors, Sri Lanka, the Standing Committee on Quality Assurance and Accreditation of the University Grant Commission. He served as a member of the Council, University of Moratuwa, and also as the Board of Management of the Lakshman Kadiragama Institute for International Relations and Strategic Studies. Major General Milinda Piris holds a Master of Philosophy degree awarded by the University of Madras, a postgraduate diploma in management from the Open University of Sri Lanka, and a diploma in senior level defense management from the University of Indo, India. During his military career, he valiantly fought in many battles launched to eradicate ruthless terrorism from the motherland in different capacities, ranging from a troop leader to a divisional commander. During his tour of duty, he was severely wounded in action in the Operation Satjaya 3. He is a recipient of Ranavikrama Padakkama for his acts of bravery in the face of the enemy and Ranasura Padakkama awarded for distinguished conduct in the face of the enemy in battle. He is also a recipient of Vishishta Seva Vibhushana Medal for exceptional, distinguished and loyal service in the Sri Lanka Army and Uttama Seva Padakkama for his unblemished military career in the Army. He was awarded the Legion of Merit, which is a military decoration of the United States Armed Force for exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services and achievements. In July 2014, Major General Milinda Piris was conferred with the Award of Outstanding Contribution to Education by the World Chancellors and Vice Chancellors Congress in recognition of the strategic and iconic position occupied by him in the fraternity of Vice Chancellors as an agent of change in global education. Further, he was conferred with the Education Leadership Award by the World Education Congress on 23rd July 2015. In addition to the above, he served as the CEO, Vice Chancellor of CG's Campus Sri Lanka, and also as a council member of the Board of Management of the Lakshman Kadiragama Institute for International Relations and Strategic Studies. Presently, he is serving as a member of the Advisory Council of the Institute of National Security Studies Sri Lanka and as the Chief Commissioner of Sri Lanka Scout Association and the Vice Chancellor of General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University. Major General Milinda Piris, Sir, we are very proud of you by inviting as the chief guest for the ICULA 2021. Thank you, ICULA 2021, and I cordially invite Major General Milinda Piris to enlighten the audience today. This is over to you, sir.
Reverences, keynote speakers, Mrs. Barbara Leeson, President of the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, IFLA, Dr. Jeevan Tyagaraj, Executive Director, Center for Humanitarian Affairs, Sri Lanka, Dr. Mrs. Pradeepa Vijayatunga, Director, National Institute for Library and Information Science, University of Colombo, the President, University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka and the Conference Chair, International Conference of University Librarians Association, ICULA 2021, Dr. Dhammika Mallavarachi, Acting Librarian of the General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University. Executives and representatives of the University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka, librarians, acting librarians, members, invitees, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. Let me begin by thanking the University Librarians Association, especially the President, Dr. Dhammika Mallavarachi, and the Executive Committee of the Association for inviting me as the chief guest at the International Conference of University Librarians Association 2021, organized on the important theme, scholarly publishing and open access for enhancement of research visibility, a theme I believe is pertinent in many respects. KDU has been actively supporting the activities of the University Librarians Association since 2015, when, as the then Vice Chancellor, I got our library staff to get the membership in your association. And since then, KDU librarians and assistant librarians have been very active members of your association. I am glad that our present librarian is currently giving the leadership to your association. And I'm happy to speak a few words at this important academic event of yours, as we believe that your progression has a direct bearing on the progression of our libraries and of our universities in turn. Recalling my memories of our school days, generally the impression we had of a library and a librarian, I would say it is not a very positive one. The library was treated as a place of sanctity that children feared to step in. The ghostly silence, the grandiose and closely monitored book racks, the musty smell of old untouched books, and more than everything, the imposing figure of a person called the librarian with an eagle's eye and hound ears, a person who assumed control, authority, and ownership over the books as well as of those who worked in the library, and even the innocent readers who entered there. We, the students, feared the threatening library and preferred the freedom and enjoyment at the playground, which attracted us even during the so-called library periods. This is perhaps the story of you, the university librarians today during our school time. However, I am sure that the university libraries that you manage today are just the contrast. I am sure they operate as the hearts of your universities or higher education institutions that attract students and staff and help them in scholarly work of accumulation, generation, and dissemination of knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, the history of libraries is reported to run back to more than 5,000 years. And as per the available records, it was in Southwestern Asia or Mesopotamia that the first known libraries had been established, where inscriptions on clay tables were displayed for reading. Since then, human civilization have evolved with knowledge being passed down from generation to generation, with libraries of the time contributing to the knowledge dissemination process. Olive inscriptions that predominated in Asia, hand-scribed writings on parchments made of animal skins, and later on parchments made of paper produced during Egyptian, Greek, and Roman civilizations are notable aspects in the evolutionary process. It was with William Carson's introduction of the first printing press in 1476 and the publication of the Gutenberg Bible that hand-script books began to replace the modern printed books, which enabled the facility for having large number of copies of the same book to be placed on library racks throughout the world. We in the 21st century today are rapidly moving into digital world and have moved into new paradigm of digital libraries where we can share knowledge through digital means or e-books, e-journals, etc. Without having to physically visit the libraries that maintain physical repositories arranged in books racks with physical catalogs to facilitate the readers. Instead, e-library facilities are increasingly being used to enhance efficiency in academic and scholarly work. Now, the e-library concept has assumed a greater significance in the new normal situation. And even those of us who were rather reluctant to change are now compelled to seek the assistance of e-resources. So in a way, the pandemic has become a blessing in disguise for our progression for the future. Universities, as you know, are the places that generate and disseminate new knowledge, and university library is identified as it is heart because it constantly supplies the energy to sustain the mechanism of knowledge accumulation, production, and dissemination. Without a sound library system, a body of a university would be similar to that of an ailing, unhealthy person whose heart is extremely weak. So you as university librarians have a huge responsibility to provide the best facilities for your clientele, that is the students, academics of your university. It is only then you could function fully in their scholarly activities. You have the dual role of being an administrator as well as academics. The constant updating of knowledge and engagement in research in your field is essential to keep your libraries up to date. It is also your responsibility to keep university administrators, academics, and students updated and educated on aspects that need enhancement. And in the sense, I believe that an active librarian can be the true agent of change in a university. Ladies and gentlemen, as much as the library is the heart of a university, I believe that the university is the heart of a nation. And a nation with a weak tertiary education system will never achieve its desired developmental goals. In other words, the future of a nation largely depends on how best its university system produces intellectuals, intellectually important professionals, and leaders for the nation. It is generally believed that the independence of a nation would depend largely on its economic strength and sustainability. But in an era in which we talk of a knowledge economy, the success of a nation will depend largely on the knowledge generation through research. So the amount of meaningful and productive research conducted and facilitated by university scholars in diverse fields, perhaps in the collaboration with professionals in the industry, will collectively support the development and elevation of a nation altogether. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the university ranking is an index that indicates where we stand in terms of generation of new knowledge. We in Sri Lanka should seriously address this issue and realistically look at our status in the World University Ranking and what our problems are. As a Vice Chancellor of a university that aspires to constantly introduce meaningful and progressive changes in the university to enhance its recognition in the global university ranking through facilitation for research, I find that the theme of your conference is very significant. And if and when we reach internationally acceptable levels of recognition, Sri Lankan universities would be able to attract foreign students, thus enabling the country to earn foreign exchange through education. A cynic may argue, how could we do that when we cannot even accommodate local students in our universities? But I believe that given the proper leadership and proper orientation, Sri Lanka can achieve such targets in the future. What we need is a positive thinking intellectuals to take the lead. The choice of the theme, scholarly publishing and open access for enhancement of research visibility, indicates your willingness to take leadership in positive directions and your awareness of the importance of not only research and scholarly publications, but also of the visibility of research. I think your deliberations under this theme would themselves end up in scholarly publications and practical solutions to resolve stumbling block in our systems. We need to understand that emphasis in our universities for quality research is comparatively less, of course, due to diverse reasons. And even the limited research findings available get limited to unpublished theses and dissertations, carefully maintained in library racks in universities, and thus comes the question of their visibility. So not only should we facilitate for scholarly work of high standing, but we also need to facilitate for the visibility of such research so that other researchers would read them and cite them in their own research, thus increasing the citations of the researcher, which is in turn encourages further research through recognition in his or her discipline. That is where our scholars can earn a name in their specific disciplinary domains, assuming prominence in the business of knowledge generation. We know that many of our scientists, academics, and scholars live for greener pastures in powerful countries, especially in the West, and some of them have earned name and fame, introduced many new innovations to the world. But the question is why they cannot do the same being in country. Our main problematic area is the unavailability of access to good journals and databases that contain latest research findings in the world. I believe that the university libraries need to be proactive in finding possibilities and resources available and creating awareness among academics and students, which will definitely encourage them to conduct meaningful research and propagate such knowledge through indexed and peer-reviewed journals of high acceptability. Open access has been defined as the means of disseminating scholarly and scientific literature over the internet free of charge to researchers and to anyone else who might benefit from accessing the results of publicity-funded research. However, I believe that you, the librarians, need to find out how open they are. The degree to which a so-called open access journal is actually open for readers need to be found out. We need to realize that scholarly publication is also part of international business. And it is the responsibility of the librarians to research into this aspect too, so that they can make their clientele educated on getting the best use from open access publications. We at KDU give the highest priority for providing the necessary infrastructure, both physical and digital, provided we are convinced that such investment would be worthwhile for the progression of our university through positive outcomes. So let me conclude my expression of thoughts, wishing you all the best in your deliberations that will enhance your horizons in the discipline of library sciences, so that you could contribute more towards your respective universities to engage in the role and the task of not only producing graduates, but more importantly, of enhancing scholarly work that will elevate our universities to a higher level in the world university ranking. Let us hope that librarians, academics, administrators, and students of universities in Sri Lanka look at the modern problems in higher education in a more holistic and rational way to move with the rapidly changing world, so that we all could contribute to the betterment of our nation and that of the humanity at large. I thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your encouraging remarks. Now, we would like to present this token of appreciation to Major General Milinda Puris, Vice Chancellor, General Sir John Kotalawala Defense University, and the Chief Guest of ICULA 2021 for sparing his time in this occasion. Dear ladies and gentlemen, this is the time to launch the proceedings of 11th International Conference organized by University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are highly privileged and honored to have Mrs. Barbara Leeson, the President, International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, as our keynote speaker today. May I kindly request Ms. D.P.C. Vitana, the acting librarian of Velasa University, Sri Lanka, to give away a brief introduction on our keynote speaker to you. Now, Ms. D.P.C. Vitana will read the citation and will invite keynote speaker.
Good morning, everybody. Ms. Barbara is the current president of the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. Her term of presidency is from August 2021 to August 2023. She had been a member of the IFLA governing board and also held the position of treasurer. For almost 30 years, Ms. Barbara has been working as the director of the public library system of Bremen, one of the largest public library systems in Germany. She is an educated librarian with university degrees in Slavonic studies, history, and educational theory. Besides her duties in Bremen Library, Ms. Barbara has been actively advocating for libraries on national and international levels. She had several offices in different library-related associations, having served as president of the German Library Association and president of Bibliothek Information Deutschland, the national umbrella organization of German Library and Information Associations. She has also held leadership positions in the European Bureau for Libraries, Archives and Documentation Associations, including executive committee membership and vice presidentship. She's an expert on any aspect of library management, especially innovation, human resource management, customer orientation, and change management. So I warmly welcome you, ma'am, to take over this session. Thank you.
Dear colleagues in Sri Lanka, I'm very grateful for the invitation by the University Libraries Association of Sri Lanka to give you a short keynote speech about IFLA and the support of IFLA to the librarians and libraries of the world. Your conference, the 11th conference, International Conference of the University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka, is an important event in your country, and not only in your country, I'm sure. I would like now to share my screen with you and to have a presentation for you in the moment. I would like to talk to you about IFLA as change leader for the global library field. I think you know that IFLA is the global voice of libraries and also the global voice for libraries. It is the leading international body representing the interests of library and information services and their users worldwide. You can see worldwide, but the headquarters of IFLA is in The Hague in the Netherlands. There's some regional offices and language centers because IFLA has 7 working languages. The leadership actually at the moment is, I'm the president, you see that, between 2021 and 2023. I have a president-elect since August, that is Tonia Arachava from Greece, and a secretary general who is the CEO, as you might say, of IFLA, and the manager and boss of the headquarters, that's Gerald Leitner from Austria. Actually, there are 3 pillars of IFLA's new approach towards the library and information profession. The first pillar was done in 2018. There was developed a global vision for the libraries of the world and the librarians of the world. Based on this global vision, IFLA developed a strategy for the next 5 years, starting in 2019, and this strategy is valid until 2024. And actually this year, The governance review was endorsed by the General Assembly in February, and we now have a new and interesting governance structure. We come to that later. Let's start with the IFLA strategy 2019-2024. This strategy has 4 directions: inspire, engage, enable, and connect. Let's have a look at the directions. Direction number 1 is strengthen the global voice of libraries. Direction number 2, inspire, enhance the professional practice. 3, connect and empower the field. And 4 is directed to IFLA itself, optimize our organization. Let's have a look at strategic direction number 1, strengthen the global voice of libraries. The direction sounds like this: we listen to and understand the priorities of the whole field and amplify the message through advocating for libraries and their values on a global and regional level. What does that mean? There are, of course, strategic directions and actions. Number 1.3 is work with library associations and libraries to identify key legal and funding challenges to their work and advocate for action. And so IFLA also is working with you, with the University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka as well. Just as an example, you see here that the LAC, the Latin American section, and IFLA developed a strategy to unite library associations. Strategic direction number 2, inspire and enhance professional practice. That sounds like this: we inspire the profession through future thinking and by encouraging new and promising approaches. We drive the development of libraries through standards, guidelines, and best practices. That means that there is developing a product of communication and distributing key resources and materials that inspire the profession, also providing tools and infrastructure that support the work of libraries. What does that mean in practice, and what does that mean for you, maybe the university librarians, and also for your conference with the scholarly publishing topic? So you see, there is a webinar, Open Access, Infodemics and Libraries Exploring the Global Equity of Science. So the webinar is on libraries, open access, and infodemic. And I hope that a seminar like this would be also interesting for you. And with that, we comply with the fields, deliver high quality campaigns, information, and other communication products on a regular basis to energize and engage libraries. Another example is academic libraries engaging in publishing. It's a webinar as well, and it's a recording of a webinar. And yeah, this webinar could be accessed. Now, at the moment, it's not accessible, could be accessed at that time, and you also could listen to the webinar as well. Then there is the job opportunity, an actual job opportunity, which was published by IFLA, you see on the 7th September, Policy and Research Officer, Copyright and Open Access. That means that IFLA headquarters will have a policy and research officer, especially on the issues of copyright and open access. And this is, of course, a best way to support the libraries of the world with these issues, because copyright and open access are so important for all libraries, especially for research and academic libraries. And with this, we provide tools and infrastructure that support the work of libraries as well. Another example of inspiring and enhancing the professional practice comes from the public libraries. There is a very important publication which was firstly issued in 1994. That's the Public Library Manifesto. And now, very quickly, very soon, there will be a new edition of the Public Library Manifesto called then Public Library Manifesto for Today. Let's have a look at strategic direction number 3. We are a hub for dialogue and action. We are the motor of a connected and aligned library field, characterized by a true spirit of collaboration and which no librarian is left behind. And here you can see the key initiatives for this strategic direction. This is support virtual networking and connections, provide targeted learning and professional development. This is also, of course, online webinars. Here you can see that the support virtual networking and connections is very important. And IFLA has about 50 professional topical groups. One of professional topical groups is called Academic and Research Libraries section. So this is the group for you, I think. This is the group for you. And you can, when you join the group or when you get the information about that group and from that group, you will find a lot of things which are helpful and necessary sometimes for you as well. And there is also an IFLA section, Academic and Research Library section, together with the IFLA strategy. So there is a acting locally, reaching globally issue of this section as well. And it is empowering the field at the national and regional levels. And when you go to the IFLA website, you can find a lot of information there. For instance, another thing is the IFLA presents digital preservation issues, of course. You can see this here. Or you can see addressing ontological inequities in the decolonial library. So this is all which is important information, and just go to the IFLA website and give in your keyword, and I think you will find a lot. Let's have another view, that is the governance. Empower the field at the national and regional levels. As I said, IFLA issued a new governance and has new statutes for this new governance. And one of the big statutes is that the governance is now oriented also onto the regions. And we have created a regional council which comes in to the governing board, and also there will be regional divisions. You can see it here. That's the new structure of the IFLA governing board. And there, this is the regional council. There is regional divisions, and Asia Pacific is one of the regional divisions, of course. You can see that. So the Asia Oceania Regional Division. And the chair of this division is Winston Roberts from New Zealand. The vice chair is Debai Chandrakar from India. And you also have a representative from Sri Lanka, Premila Gamage. You have, I hope I can pronounce that name properly. She is the one who is a member of this Asia Pacific division, representing, of course, the interests of Sri Lanka, and not only the interests of Sri Lanka, but she is from your country. And I congratulate your country that you have such a good representative in this division. So you see, IFLA is working on the professional way. IFLA is working on the advocacy and regional way. And I hope that you will be connected to IFLA, because it's important to be inspired, to be engaged, and then to be enabled and to be connected. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you a great conference with many different fantastic insights. And of course, I hope that we can meet in future in person. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Madam, for your words of wisdom, and thank you for creating a valuable platform for the academic sessions lined up ahead. Now, we would like to present this token of appreciation to Mrs. Barbara Leeson, President, International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, for sparing her precious time to grace this ceremony. Thank you very much, Madam.
Ladies and gentlemen, on this very special occasion, we are highly honored and pleased to have Mr. Jiva Tyagaraja, Chairman, Center for Humanitarian Affairs, Sri Lanka, as our second keynote speaker today. May I kindly request Mrs. P.G.R. Samaravikrama, Senior Assistant Librarian of University of Sri Jawaharlal, to give away a brief introduction on the next keynote speaker to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ICULA 2021, for giving me the opportunity to introduce the keynote speaker today, Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja. Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja graduated from the SAOS University London and obtained his MA in South Asian Studies from the School of Oriental and African Studies, the University of London. Apart from that, he has followed courses and programs in business, entrepreneurship, and migration from INSEAD Business School, Singapore, and University of Oxford, respectively, in his present position. He is the chairman of Center for Humanitarian Affairs in Sri Lanka and the Institute for Human Rights. Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja is a known professional in the areas of preventing violent extremism, promoting human security, responding to pandemics and disasters, and promoting governance working since 1984, working with specialist partners and institutions. Mr. Tyagaraja also obtained membership from bodies such as the Institute of Commonwealth Studies of the School of Advanced Study, University of London, and Eminent Persons Group on Refugee and Migratory Movements, Sri Lanka. Mr. Tyagaraja promotes multiculturalism, designing public policies, and defining advisory services for policies around humanitarian affairs. He has worked for government, in non-profit sector and multilateral bodies of the government, and serves as a columnist and resource person in think tanks. Dear Mr. Tyagaraja, we understand that your knowledge and experience is crucial to our country when we have faced a global pandemic, and hope you will be a great asset in combating humanitarian issues that come along with our post-pandemic scenario in Sri Lanka. Thanking all for your patient listening, I cordially invite Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja to enlighten the audience today as the keynote speaker. Over to you, sir.
A very good morning to you. Major General Milinda Pires, Vice Chancellor, the Conference Chair, keynote speakers, distinguished invitees and participants. I'd like to, at the beginning, thank Dr. Chammika Malavarachi and the organizing committee for inviting me to contribute in a very modest way as one of the speakers at this international conference of the University Librarians Association 2021. Looking at the topic of scholarly publishing and open access for the enhancement of research visibility, it occupies a very important place for all writers and also certainly for students in the formal and non-formal sense. But of course, open access has its own pros and cons. While it enables individuals to freely access the complete text of academic articles in journals without the need for subscription, payment, or registration, and this would be true even via the internet, there are also other pitfalls. Of course, via the internet, regardless whether you're an academic or otherwise, you're very close and just a mouse click away from obtaining reference at extremely high speed without having to bother to run through text, academic literature. But there is also the dimension that you may have predatory journals which often take center stage, which divert the focus away from beneficial aspects of open access, not just for those in academia, but to the broader public. Let's look at the impact on academics first. Open access publishing grants authors with more visibility as more people can read their work and download the articles as PDFs. Usually, researchers can easily access articles relating to their field of work through their libraries. Yes, it's hard for them to find literature relating to other areas unless they obtain tedious interlibrary facilities. University open access will enable researchers to transcend this barrier and save time in finding articles. This is especially true because they have to scour otherwise through hundreds, even thousands of references every year. So every second obviously counts. This could especially be important in Sri Lanka as there are funding anomalies when compared to more endowed researchers in other parts of the world. It also means that poorer students, people with less resources, have more or less equal access if you have the use of internet. Researchers can gain a wealth of information and promote their work if they support open access publishing. Importantly, researchers could gain access to groundbreaking findings from other disciplines, which could promote collaboration between fields and heighten the mutual appreciation between academics. And I'll come to that in a bit. Academics make up a small portion of the population, yet open access publishing can have impact on the layman too. Granting more open access options to the public will allow them to gain valuable information, particularly with regard to health, etc., that they could use in conjunction with professional advice to complement their treatment programs. This is an example of how you can put that into practice. Academics make up a small portion of the population, but they do constitute faculty, as it were. This would provide the public with more agency and could incentivize them to take a more proactive role in their healing educational processes. More importantly, in this COVID era, access to reputed scientific journals could combat the insidious and impacts of fake news that is prevalent on so many social media platforms. Public with access to reputable journals will be able to correct mistakes and protect themselves from falling prey to incorrect and outdated information. If I were to spend a little bit more time on the current pandemic, the context in which we are now gathering, there's a wealth of information that has come out from last year, and it continues to do so, particularly in relation to not just the diagnosis, but also the treatment options. Here, there's considerable debate, great debate on what constitutes modern options for treatment and what many of the old-time medical practitioners know could also respond to viruses. This has been true even in Sri Lanka, where our own doctors have a wealth of information, but that knowledge is not mainstream. What is mainstream is the current treatment plans that are coming out from many parts of the world. But I emphasize, be it in Sri Lanka, be it in India, be it in potentially African countries, countries in the Southern Hemisphere, and for that matter, in many other parts of the world, the treatment regimes are not too widely and well known. What is known is more about how to take the vaccine and which vaccine to take, not about how one can potentially fight the pandemic, the virus in particular, how one could boost immunity, how indigenous methods can work with Western practices. Now, this is where open access would play a huge role, and pandemics don't come very often. So in this current context, if you ask the question, what is the role of open access? I think the answer is very, very clear. The more access, the better it is. It's not merely for academia, it's about saving lives. It's about the cost of treatment that goes in right now. For example, let's say if you're in an intensive care unit, the cost attached to that. Is there a way of preventing you from getting into intensive care? And how can you get that knowledge out? Not just, the pandemic is striking not just one strata of people, it strikes literally everybody. It doesn't discriminate between the rich and the poor, it strikes any and everybody. So that's an example of where open access can play a huge role. Now, on the other side, if you look at the pitfalls, we could have publications which pick up on open access and present false conclusions and use the social media to spread the incorrect information. It's a double-edged sword, I recognize. With regard to the economic component of open access in the Sri Lankan context, publishing processes and the fees it attracts becomes a deterrent, as a lack of funding in research domains is quite evident, particularly for us. This contributes a bias towards publishing, which is more well endowed and discriminates against the ones which are not. But there are measures which can be taken potentially to try and negate this and to promote sustainable use of open access publishing. There is no better way to facilitate change than to include those who are most passionate about it. Given that there are multiple stakeholders, the logical route would be to organize collaborative efforts between them to promote open access publishing. In particular, there should be cooperation between research funders, universities, major publishers, and local libraries. Now, once more, I'd like to take a brief time out and ask the conference, can you think about it? Would you like to go set about it? Is it possible that as a collective, one could walk in this direction? Do please consider. This collaboration should ideally lead to the establishment of a regulatory body that oversees the sustainable, reputable publishing of open access articles and cracks down on any and all predatory journals within the country. Now, here too, I do not wish to mention names, but we do have institutions which can bring libraries together, which maintain particular standards, etc. And potentially you could add one more activity to your agenda in this respect. The other is a white list of accepted journals, which could be drawn up to help researchers disseminate between quality journals and unreliable ones. At the same time, funders should pledge to only support high-quality journals that are committed to ethical research processing. Here too, I just like to flag up, universal languages have greater latitude and leeway in this business. Local languages may not necessarily have that latitude, but local knowledge could potentially be in local languages and not necessarily in universal languages. So what's the meeting point? How does one bring in local knowledge in local languages with universal languages, and what's the crossing point? Is there some way in which we could, I'm not saying that we'll get to a point of equalizing opportunities, but at least a crossing point. Because what is research? Research is based on fieldwork, fieldware, and I think you can ask the question, fieldwork where? And there is a particular segment of knowledge which is lifted through research from people, and the monetary benefits are not necessarily accruing to the people who give you that knowledge. At the same time, local knowledge applied locally has dividends, and it's something that needs to be given serious thought. In a similar way, despite the allure of gaining research exposure, those in academia should reject offers to publish in fraudulent journals and refuse to accept offers of board membership and gift editorship. These are things which are carrots that are offered globally. Universities can create mandates asserting that faculty members must make OA versions of their articles. Again, as funding seems to be the big issue with regard to OA publishing, universities could seek to work with other research institutions to create proposals for extending external funding. This is easier said than done, but collaborative efforts will have a much higher chance of success than individuals' effort to promote OA publishing. It's rational and logical. With regard to the public recipients of OA articles, there should be efforts to educate the public on how to critically analyze articles and differentiate reliable articles from unreliable, biased material. This can be organized by nationwide campaigns by passionate individuals, as everyone could benefit from the form of education, particularly the ability to use information from research articles while individually evaluating the merit of those articles instead of spreading doubtful information. All these potential solutions may seem overwhelming, but it can be explored incrementally in order to facilitate change. The crux of the matter is that OA publishing has an impact that stretches beyond academia and deserves to be taken seriously. The possibilities are endless. But before I close, I go once again, go back to what human beings have called pre-existing knowledge. Now, that knowledge is not necessarily, it's not in written form all the time. It's in one's brain, and unless one is asked, it may not be known. But and sometimes this knowledge is in the hands of people who are extremely simple, peasants, farmers, fishermen, people who are working in the estate sector, artisans, so on and so forth. Now, there is a monetary value to that knowledge, but that's never monetized. And I'm not saying that it must monetize. All I'm saying is that people have pre-existing knowledge. And this unfortunately is required in a oral form, if not in some written form. It's when you get into the written form that you come up with certain obstacles, and that is, can it be written without it being a research document? If it is, what form and standards must it have? But is it not knowledge anyway? Does it have to be utterly and absolutely academic in its presentation and form? Will you lose a lot of local language if you insist on that? But if you don't insist on that, what would you get as a finished product? Will it start affecting academic work? These are challenges. But open access is about many of this. We're talking about knowledge. And the more access to knowledge one has, the better we will be across the board, as countries, as economies, as communities, even when confronted with things like pandemics, the return of it, different waves of the pandemics, which we don't want. But how do we contest all of that? So these are all issues, I hope, which are food for thought. And I sincerely hope that the deliberations will be fruitful, it will be beneficial, and my modest contribution is in some form useful. And in closing, I once again thank the organizers. And I must emphasize that the paper that was shared was written actually by my daughter. She is studying in Malaysia. She researched and wrote it, and I must acknowledge her contribution to this. Thank you very much, and I wish you all very productive conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing such fruitful thoughts among all of us. And we are honored to present a token of appreciation on behalf of ICULA 2021 to Mr. Jiva Tyagaraja, Chairman, Center for Humanitarian Affairs, Sri Lanka, for sparing his time and enlightening today's ceremony.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, next, I am privileged to invite our next keynote speaker, Dr. Pradeepa Vijayatunga, Director, National Institute of Library and Information Science, University of Colombo. We are pleased to have you here with us today, ma'am. So without further ado, I kindly request Mrs. M.P. Rajapaksha, Senior Assistant Librarian, General Sir John Kothalavala Defence University, to give away a brief introduction on the next keynote speaker to you. Mrs. Rajapaksha will read the citation and will invite the keynote speaker.
Good morning to everybody. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to introduce Dr. Mrs. Pradeepa Vijayatunga, Director of the National Institute of Library and Information Sciences, University of Colombo, as one of the keynote speakers of ICULA 2021. Dr. Pradeepa Vijayatunga, currently the Director of the National Institute of Library and Information Sciences, University of Colombo, has completed 35 years of service in the university library sector, Sri Lanka. Dr. Pradeepa Vijayatunga served as the librarian, University of Peradeniya from January 2011 to March 2015. In April 2015, she was appointed as the librarian of University of Colombo. Dr. Vijayatunga obtained Master of Librarianship from University of Wales, UK. Doctor of Philosophy from University of Colombo, Masters in Information Studies, Knowledge Management from University of Canberra, Australia, and Master of Arts, Buddhist Studies from University of Colombo. She has also obtained Certificate in Teaching in Higher Education from University of Colombo and with the accreditation from the Staff Educational and Development Association, UK in 2001. Further, she is a chartered librarian and a fellow of the Sri Lanka Library Association and the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals, UK. She has held the position of president in both Sri Lanka Library Association and University Librarians Association. She has contributed over 100 publications in LIS education, knowledge management, information literacy, and several other LIS-related themes. She was the coordinator of the Consortium of Sri Lankan Academic Libraries. Dr. Wijetunga received a Special Leadership Development Award in 2005 from the International Association of School Librarianship for promoting teacher librarianship nationally and internationally, and the Best Woman Librarian in 2011 from the Statinder Cowell Foundation for the Advancement of Librarianship of India for the contribution made to the development of LIS education in Sri Lanka. She has received many research grants and awards, including the University of Colombo Senate Award for Research Excellence in 2019 and received Dr. H. Anil Kumar Memorial 2020 Emerald South Asia LIS Research Fund Award in 2020. Dr. Wijetunga's current research include the information-seeking behavior of undergraduates, reading habits of undergraduates in the COVID-19 affected educational environment, and research productivity of universities. With this brief introduction, I cordially invite our keynote speaker, Dr. Mrs. Pradeepa Wijetunga, to deliver her keynote address. Over to you, Madam.
Very good morning to all of you. Our chief guest today, Major General Melinda Peiris, Vice Chancellor, General Sir John Kothalavala Defence University, Mrs. Barbara Leeson, President, International Federation of Library Associations, Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja, Chairman, Center of Humanitarian Affairs, Dr. Chamika Mallavarachi, President of the University Librarians Association and the Conference Chair of ICULA 2021, the Executive Committee members of the University Librarians Association, Dr. Mrs. M.M. Mashrufa, the Secretary, ICULA 2021, and all the members of the Conference Organizing Committee, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen, and colleagues. It is a great pleasure for me to be with you today, and I would like to thank Dr. Mallavarachi, Mrs. Mashrufa, and the members of the Conference Organizing Committee for inviting me to deliver a keynote address today. I would like to share a few thoughts of mine about publishing open access for enhancement of the research visibility. But before that, let me share my screen with you so that you can see the main points which I'm going to talk about today. Please bear with me for a few seconds until I share my screen with you. Right. The central theme of this conference deals with three very significant concepts for the academia: scholarly publishing, open access, and research visibility. I want to draw your attention first to scholarly publishing and then to the open access movement very briefly. As you see, scholarly publications is a subset of a wider domain of scholarly communication. Scholarly publishing, as we commonly understand, are the publications related to the academic disciplines written by the scholars of that discipline and reviewed by their peers before getting published. A scholar is defined by Boyer, a renowned educationist, by moving away from the linear approach that has often characterized the faculty members either as researchers or teachers. He argues that scholarship has 4 elements: the scholarship of discovery, the scholarship of integration, the scholarship of application, and the scholarship of teaching, and that these 4 aspects dynamically interact, forming an independent whole. Although Boyer talks about the faculty members, this model is applicable to the librarians as well in the Sri Lankan context, in which the librarians are academics. It is interesting to question, why do scholars really want to publish? On a more practical note, scholarly publications are needed for the recruitment and promotions at the beginning of a young scholar's career. On a more qualitative note, when they move up their career ladder, it is mainly to disseminate their research findings, but not with the sole objective of dissemination. Scholars expect professional recognition and esteem in their own sphere, and also from their periphery by publishing. They wish to build up their reputation. They also expect their publishing reputation to bring many other opportunities like research grants, collaborations, consultancies, fellowships, and invitations for scholarly events, etc. In short, scholars publish not just to disseminate their research findings, but also to achieve their aspirations and to reflect their behavior. The types of scholarly publications vary from monographs, journal articles, conference abstracts and papers, editorials, review papers, and the like. However, the journal article seems to be the most popular type among many scholars. The beginning of scholarly journal publishing dates back to 1665, when Henry Oldenburg created the world's first research journal, the Philosophical Transactions, as part of his responsibilities as a joint secretary of the newly established Royal Society of London. He was compelled to create this journal in order to address the issues faced by the early scientists, primarily to protect their position as the first discoverer of a concept or a research finding. Attribution of authorship, peer review, dissemination, and archiving were inherited from Oldenburg by the later journal publishing industry. Scholarly publishing has passed several distinctive periods. Rapid growth during 1945 to 1970 as a result of mainly increased research funding after the Second World War, and also introducing the journal ranking and impact factor by the Science Citation Index during this same period. Scholarly communication crisis caused by the consolidation of the publishing industry, the high cost of academic journals, and new journal pricing models, which significantly reduced the buying power of libraries and impeded access to knowledge, were experienced during the second period from 1971 to 1995. Let me briefly introduce now the beginning of the open access movement. During the third period, from 1996 to 2004, a new digital age started emerging. As a consequence of the potential of internet and also the scholarly communication crisis, publishers introduced the bundling of journals during this period, for which they offered discounts. The libraries were further affected as they were compelled to subscribe to some journals included in these bundles, though they had no use of them. These challenges led to the emergence of the open access movement. However, the concept of free access to knowledge existed long before it became famous as open access. For instance, Mahatma Gandhi's Hind Swaraj, published in Gujarati in 1909, which is recognized as the intellectual blueprint of India's freedom movement, was translated into English the following year with a copyright statement that recorded no rights reserved. The term open access in its modern sense was first formulated in 3 public statements in the early 2000s. The Budapest Conference on Open Access in 2002, the Bethesda Statement on Open Access Publishing in 2003, and the Berlin Declaration on Open Access to Scientific and Humanitarian Knowledge in 2003. In 2001, in United States, the Creative Commons, a non-profit organization, developed the first version of licenses for materials placed in open access. A unique characteristic of open access publishing is that the author or an organization bearing the cost of publishing as article processing charge or APC, so that the readers get free access to the publications. At present, we can see several types of open access models, for example, gold, green, diamond, platinum, bronze, etc. But I'm not going to elaborate on these things, as you all are very well familiar with them as librarians. There is no argument that the open access publishing model has significantly impacted accessibility to research findings, especially when the subscription model prevents many readers from accessing the vital information they need. The open access model has enabled stress-free and cost-free access to published record research findings. However, open access movement is not absent of many reservations. A primary concern is about the peer review process. The publication quality is questioned in contrast to the high impact journals. The open access journals with a relatively new beginning are yet to gain high impact and high prestige. Further, the undervaluing of open access publications by the educational authorities, the reluctance of the faculty to publish in open access journals due to their inadequate recognition, the need for authors to pay the high APCs, and the failure of many institutions to support APCs are some such concerns. The connection of predatory journals with open access publishing is a principal concern of academia. Jeffrey Beall accuses that the predatory journals are corrupting and exploiting open access, especially the author pay model. According to Beall, these predatory publishers are dishonest and lack transparency. They aim to dupe researchers, especially those inexperienced in scholarly communication. They set up websites that closely resemble those of legitimate online publishers and publish journals of questionable and downright low quality. In a landscape where the researchers are expected to engage in scholarly publishing without falling prey to the flourishing predators, let me draw your attention to the third concept of this conference theme, the increasing the visibility of research and publications. Why do we have to be concerned about the visibility of our research? We engage in research, then publish the findings in high impact journals, and meticulously update our CVs with the list of publications. We achieve promotions, new positions, research awards, more opportunities, and basically esteem, reputation, recognition, and benefits based on our research and publications. Is that all? Is that the end? Do we fulfill the academic and social responsibility with that? No. Our role does not end with self-actualization. We do have an obligation to the funding agencies to translate their financial commitments into the benefits for the society. The research findings rarely reach the policymakers, political and community leaders, entrepreneurs, or even the general public. It is said that it takes 17 years for just 14% of medical research to be implemented in the everyday practice. Often, the new knowledge generated by research ends up on library shelves, institutional repositories, or in scholarly publications without adequate exposure. This disconnection between the research findings and the change of practice is called knowledge translation gap. There are several reasons for this knowledge translation gap. For example, research studies are often complicated. They do not target the general audience who need shorter, more straightforward, simpler, easily digestible summaries. Scholarly articles are read only by a smaller number of people, mainly the researchers. And also, the articles are not freely accessible to many. This is where we must take research visibility seriously. The authors have to go beyond publishing and increase the visibility of their research so that the findings reach all target groups. We need to translate our scholarly publications into formats that diverse social groups can comprehend and appreciate. In addition to the scholarly publications, the authors need to publicize the research findings and projects through various formats like infographics, visual abstracts, video abstracts, podcasts, and short videos across different platforms, including social media like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The diagram shows you that it is not adequate to stop by carrying out the research and publishing the findings. Beyond that, the authors have a role to increase the visibility as well as the impact of the research. Academic search engine optimization is now being used to increase the visibility of research across the internet. Enhancing the visibility of scholarly publications will positively affect their impact, since visibility will lead more readers to the publications, which will in turn lead many of them to cite the publications in their own work. The impact of research draws considerable attention from all stakeholders in academia and the international ranking agencies. The increased visibility of individual research will lead to the increased impact of individual research, which will strongly underpin the impact at an institutional level. The impact of research is measured at 3 levels: author level, article level, and journal level. The measurements used are the conventional bibliometric as well as altometric ones. I do not expect to elaborate on these impact measurement methods, as librarians are quite familiar with them. But anyway, I will just summarize them in the next 2 slides. Bibliometric measurements used to measure impact are indicated in this slide. Author impact is measured by citation analysis, H-index and G-index. Article and book impact is measured by citation count, field normalized citation impact, citation percentiles, and rankings. And the journal impact is measured by the journal impact factor, IGEN factor, article influence score, site score, source normalized impact per paper. These are the conventional measures. When it comes to altmetrics, they are an alternative to the traditional bibliometric measurements. They provide more qualitative data on the publications, like how often an article is discussed or used around the world, mainly in the internet. Altmetrics will measure, for example, how many people have been exposed to one publication, why a research paper is being discussed, whether it's in a blog or as a news item or in social sharing, or even what influence a research paper has on the wider society by measuring where it occurs in other publications. To conclude my address, I want to highlight that scholarly publications will originate only from the scholars who form an independent whole by the interaction of Boyer's 4 elements: discovery, integration, application, and teaching. Open access can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, if handled correctly, ethically, and morally, with good peer review, it provides many publishing opportunities for emerging young scholars. On the other hand, it can entice the naive researcher towards data fabrication, data falsification, plagiarizing, salami slicing, and similar fraudulent research practices. There are possibilities for many to be allured by the predatory publishers who would promise rapid output, albeit minus high quality peer review. The situation will be further muddled when such publications in the guise of scholarly products are publicized through social media for the mere sake of visibility. The peer-produced wow factor will mislead such authors, ignorant of the difference between the genuine and pseudo-intellectual feedback. Instead of reputation, recognition, and esteem, the visibility of such unethical, predatory, or pseudo-publications will bring only humiliation, disgrace, scorn, and penalties, not only to the individuals, but also to the organizations to which these individuals are associated. Though policies, guidelines, and types of penalties are not well established at present, the individual universities, University Grants Commission, respective standing committees, CVCT, and many other entities are actively engaged in formulating preventive policies to stop fraudulent research and publications. Therefore, I conclude with an appeal to the ICULA membership to be well aware of the positive as well as negative aspects of open access, measures adapted to increase research visibility and impact, and do not fall prey to predatory or vanity publishing. With that note, I conclude my presentation and let me stop sharing my presentation. I understand that there are about 15 papers to be presented, including some international papers, and over 100 participants have registered. I wish to congratulate all the presenters and the participants and wish that you will have a very successful academic session today. And also I wish to thank the president and the organizing committee for all your efforts to make today's event a grand success. Thank you so much and stay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam, for sharing your inspiring thoughts and enlightening all of us with extremely relevant ideas. We are honored to present this token of appreciation on behalf of ICULA 2021 to Dr. Pradeepa, Director, National Institute of Library and Information Science, University of Colombo, for sparing her precious time to grace the ceremony. Thank you very much, Madam. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude the inaugural ceremony, may I invite Conference Secretary of ICULA 2021, Dr. Ennima Shrupa, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to be here as the Secretary of International Conference of University Librarians Association, ICULA 2021, to propose the vote of thanks. The University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka has been serving to academic library professions through various strategic approaches, such as educating the members, giving revenues to publish the research findings of the members in its journal and conference proceedings, conducting colloquium and international conferences, and regulating professional standards and ethics of the profession. In such series of events, today we are conducting the 11th International Conference of University Librarians Association, ICULA 2021, virtually, even though the fourth wave of pandemic is hitting us yearly. First and foremost, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the Chief Guest, Major General Milinda Peiris, Vice Chancellor of General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University, for gracing this occasion with his words of wisdom. Thank you very much, sir. My heartiest thanks go to the keynote speaker, Mrs. Barbara Lizan, President, International Federation of Library Association and Institutions. Thank you very much, Madam, for gracing this occasion, even though your schedule is very tight due to the new role of ICULA Presidency and the World Library and Information Congress. Thank you once again. I also should thank to Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja, Chairman, Center for Humanitarian Affairs, for being with us today to grace this occasion. My heartiest thanks go to Dr. Mrs. Pradeepa Vijayatunga, Director, National Institute of Library and Information Science, University of Colombo, for sharing her expertise among the participants and delivering a fruitful keynote address. Thank you, Madam. My heartiest thanks go to plenary speakers, Dr. Mrs. Nayana Vijayasundara, Librarian, University of Sri Jayawardenepura, Dr. Chaminda Jayasundara, Librarian, University of Kelaniya, and Dr. Mrs. Namali Suravira, Senior Lecturer and the former head of the Department of Library and Information Science, University of Kelaniya, for accepting our invitation as plenary speakers. On behalf of the conference committee, we thank the distinguished invitees, Mr. W. Sunil, Director General, National Library and Documentation Services Board, Dr. Nadira Rupasinghe, Director General, National Archives, Senior Professor M.K. Veerasinghe, Head of the Department, Library and Information Science, University of Kelaniya, all university librarians and former librarians, Dr. Ruwan Gamage, President, Sri Lanka Library Association for gracing this inaugural ceremony with your presence. At this juncture, I should remind and thank the guidance, continuous support, and motivation given by the executive committee members of the University Librarians Association to conduct this international conference successfully. I also express my thanks to the conference chair, Dr. Chammika Mallavarachi, President of University Librarians Association of Sri Lanka, co-chairs ADB Kumara, Dr. Saman Ilangaratna, Dr. Anand Kissa, Mrs. KHT Abhisekara, co-secretaries Mr. V. Alagaratnam, Mrs. MP Rajapaksha, our editor, Dr. Mrs. GDMN Samaradhivikara, our web and technical committee members, Reverend Dayananda Panyananda Thero, Mr. B.E.S. Bandara, Mr. Samandira Kadua, and all the conference committee members for your blessed support to conduct this event successfully. I would like to thank all the participants, session chairs, paper presenters, co-authors, and our program compeers, Mr. Ravi Kumar Muttaraja and Mrs. Ishara Senaratna. Also, I express my hearty appreciations and thanks to the reviewers, chief editor, and editorial committee members of the proceeding. Finally, I thank the event organizers, International Institute for Knowledge Management, and media personnel. I wish you all to enjoy the technical and plenary sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mashrufa. Now, it is the time to conclude the inaugural session of ICULA 2021. And I would like to invite all the participants to join the technical session, which will be started at 12:30 p.m. Thank you.